If you're watching this video in 2017, you know for a fact that smartphones have been receiving beautiful designs that just grab your attention right away. This year has been a great start for smartphones, and LG bit the bullet a little earlier than expected by launching the G6, the successor to the not so well appraised G5. And they've struck back big time. Now, I'm pretty aware of the competition right now because the Samsung Galaxy S8 has been receiving a lot of fame for its design and just the way how it looks. Plus, it has its own exclusive features that are Samsung focused. And as much as I would love to get my hands on one, for the time being, I've been using the G6. So I'm just going to talk about my experience for the past few weeks. And so here's my full review. But before that, a quick message from our sponsor.
It's time to show off your elite side with NCIX.
Okay, so let's just get a few things clarified before I proceed to the review. I've been using the Nexus 6P for the past few years now, and I've never felt the need for an upgrade. It has a beautiful QHD AMOLED screen, excellent build and design, along with a fantastic camera. It gets me through the day just fine, and I've always been a fan of the cleaner user experience with stock Android. It has received numerous updates over time, and currently it's rocking Android's latest 7.1.1 OS, but oddly enough, the G6 hasn't passed 7.0. I mean, really? A 2-year-old phone versus a 2-month-old phone. Anyways, I swapped the SIM from the 6P to the G6, booted it up, and spent about 30 minutes downloading the apps and setting up to fit my style. The first thing I noticed right away was the size of the G6. Comparing them side by side, you can see that the G6 has a much smaller footprint than the 6P, yet it boasts the exact same 5.7-inch display. That's crazy! And look at those bezels. It almost spans across the entire phone, and I love it. The top and bottom chin are symmetrical, and check out these curved corners on that screen. The attention to detail is just stunning, and that goes for the overall build quality as well. It's made out of metal and glass, and structurally this thing is legit. I'm actually more comfortable using this phone without a case than what I would do with the 6P. Seriously guys, when you pick this up, you'll feel premium quality all over the body, and to me, that's always a plus. But it does come with its own caveats. The rear side of the phone is covered in Gorilla Glass 5, which looks great, especially with the brushed metal texture hidden underneath, although this glass picks up smudges and grease easily, which makes the phone uncomforting to hold at times. A quick fix to this would obviously be applying a skin of some sort on the back of this phone, but I want to hear your thoughts about this. Do you prefer a glass back on a flagship smartphone compared to something like a matte black finish? Let us know in the comments down below. The G6 comes with an IP68 water and dust resistant rating, so that should prevent damage from accidental spills. I respect LG for including this feature because competitors have already adapted this since last year, and I think it's safe to say that it is an expectation to see this implemented on every flagship device from now on. Oh, and for those wondering, the G6 comes with a headphone jack. Sadly, the North American models don't come with the high-performance quad 32-bit DAC found on the V20, but hey, at least they've included a headphone jack, and it's actually really good. In fact, it's miles better than the terrible one found on the 6P. The G6 can drive my HD 598s really well, and I had my zone out moments, so I'll just leave it at that. Along with the nano SIM card slot, LG has also included a micro SD card slot that can be expanded up to 2 terabytes. Hold on, 2 terabytes? Really? Can you find a card that exists with that capacity? If you do, it's probably going to cost you a fortune, but I'm glad LG has provided us with that storage expansion because once again, North American models come with 32 gigabytes of onboard storage, and I've already eaten up more than half the capacity over the course of 2 weeks. It's something to keep in mind, especially if you plan on using this phone for taking a lot of pictures or 4K video. I took a while to get used to the button layout on the G6. The volume rockers are located at the top left side of the body, whereas my Nexus 6P had all the buttons on the right side, which ergonomically is the best side for button placements to reach with your thumb, in my opinion. But thanks to the smaller size of the G6, activating any buttons on the left was simple with my index finger. The power button is located at the back, which also acts as a fingerprint reader, and it's pretty fast at unlocking the device. You can also double tap to wake up the screen if you're using the phone laid flat on a desk, and there's no camera bumps whatsoever, so you can comfortably use the device without experiencing unnecessary movement. Finally, let's talk about that display. I'm still blown away by the fact that they were able to cram a 5.7-inch screen in such a compact form factor. Remember, it boasts a 2880 by 1440 resolution, and if you were to do the math, that equates to an 18:9 or 2:1 aspect ratio. So here's what you need to know. You're getting a slightly taller screen that gives you a lot more vertical real estate for multitasking if you use that feature. On the downside, you'll experience these black bars watching native 16:9 content. Honestly, it's not a big deal for me personally, but I would have preferred an AMOLED or OLED panel because with that, you'd be getting a lot more deeper blacks than what you'd be normally noticing with an IPS LCD screen. That being said, this is not a bad display. I really enjoyed my time watching content and just using the phone on a regular basis. I'll admit, it took me a few days to get used to these slightly toned down colors compared to the AMOLED screen on the 6P, and a good example of that would be this picture I tweeted out just a few days into testing. At first, I thought that the colors were a bit washed out, but a couple days later, I noticed that they were just fine. It's interesting how we perceive colors differently, especially when you switch screens. And if you're watching this video on an AMOLED display, it might look a lot more saturated when compared against an IPS LCD panel. Some other key features about this display is that it supports the Dolby Vision standard. That means you're getting better dynamic range, brightness, contrast, so consuming content was a pleasant experience. The colors looked great, but it all comes down to content availability. The saturation level obviously does not stand up against an AMOLED display, but that's subjective. What do you guys think? AMOLED or IPS? Let us know in the comments down below. It's always hard to find a smartphone these days with front-facing speakers, and the LG G6 follows the same trend. Now, there's a single 1.2 driver at the bottom that's decent, but not mind-blowing. Plus, you can easily mute it with your fingers when you're using the phone in landscape mode. And look, compromises have to be made for integrating this large display, and I understand that, but if you care about front-facing speakers, you should probably look elsewhere. The software experience out of the box was not the best that I've come across on an Android phone. Let me get this straight. The G6 comes with Android 7.0, and on top of that, LG has applied their own skin, which in my eyes still needs improvement. Everything from the built-in keyboard to LG's proprietary apps takes up unnecessary space. Maybe I'm just being too silly, but I wanted to replicate a similar and minimalist experience from my 6P. So here's what I did. Install Nova Launcher and Google Keyboard, scale the display all the way down to its native resolution, enable the developer settings and reduce the animation scales to 0.5x, and man, the phone felt snappy right away. LG has a theme store built in. I took advantage of the dark theme and it looks pretty awesome with my setup. That's the beauty with Android. The user has full control of the software experience. Customization is endless, and thankfully the phone was fast, even though it uses a slightly outdated Snapdragon 821 chip. I honestly don't care about high-end specs at this point because as long as the phone keeps up well with my tasks, I'm happy. This brings me to the next best thing about the LG G6, the battery life. Look, I'm a light user during weekdays because I spend most of my time in the studio editing, scripting, and filming products, so casual usage gets me somewhere around 50 to 60% for the next day. Now, I did spend a few days using the phone immensely, catching up on a few TV shows on Netflix, scripting a few reviews, checking mail, you name it. And surprisingly, the phone got me well over 6 hours of screen on time. Remember, usage can vary from one person to the other, but the G6 does a pretty good job holding up to that task. Even if you were to run out of juice, this phone supports Quick Charge 3.0 and charges via Type-C. I plugged in this phone with 10% left, and once again, thanks to Quick Charge, this thing topped out at 50% in just 30 minutes. That should get you through the day, but don't forget this phone also supports wireless charging, so there's that convenience. So the last thing to cover here are the dual 13 megapixel cameras located at the back of the phone. One of them is used for taking portraits both in daylight and low light due to its f1.8 aperture. The other one features a 125-degree wide-angle lens at f2.4. That means you can fit a lot more subjects in the shot without having to back yourself to readjust everything. This is a really unique feature about the G6, and I sure had a lot of fun testing both cameras. Before I get into the results, I want to quickly mention LG's default crop factor. Out of the box, the G6 has been set to take pictures at 8.7 megapixels. This was done to take advantage of the 18:9 display, but that crops the sensor and you lose a lot more detail with photos, as you see. I went back to the settings and enabled the 4:3 option, which takes advantage of the full 13 megapixel sensor, and pictures I'm about to show you here were taken with that setting. So let's start with the primary camera. The pictures look really good, to be honest. Dynamic range is excellent, especially if you enable the HDR option, and there was zero shutter lag when snapping these. What's also interesting about the camera app is you have full manual control if you want to play around with the white balance, shutter speed, ISO, and even options for manual focus with peaking. Seriously guys, this takes mobile photography to the next level. Albeit, when you zoom in a little bit, you'll notice that the details are softer, but if you're sharing pictures on social media, this should be more than sufficient. Let's take a look at some samples.
It's time to take illumination seriously with Vengeance RGB DDR4 memory by Corsair. With incredibly bright LEDs and uniform color spread, add a touch of classic color that is fully software controllable and compatible with a wide variety of Intel and AMD platforms. More info in the description below.
So my final verdict about the LG G6 is that I loved using it for the past few weeks. Everything from the build quality to the design to the gorgeous 5.7-inch display to the camera, or cameras if I were to be more technical, were awesome. You really need to play around with the settings to get the best possible experience. I did it and the difference was night and day, and I still enjoy using it on a regular basis. The battery life is amazing. In fact, it's probably one of the reasons why I'm switching over from my Nexus 6P to the LG G6, because I was averaging about 3 hours on the 6P, and the G6 gets me well over 6 hours, so that's double the time. And so that's actually a plus for me. And while I'm aware that the camera needs a lot of improvement, I'm pretty sure that LG can fix that with a software update. And the last thing to discuss here is the price, because the G6 starts at $650 and goes all the way up depending on what carrier you're with in the United States. I think for the price, you are getting a pretty decent package. In fact, I would wholeheartedly recommend this phone just because of the display, the battery life, and the design and the build quality. It just is a premium device. And I'm sure there are alternatives out there like the OnePlus 3T that costs a lot less than the G6, but you also have higher price phones like the iPhone 7 or the Galaxy S8. Those are really expensive phones and they feature great designs, but I guess it all comes down to user preference. So I'm going to leave it right there, and I want to know your thoughts about the LG G6. What do you guys think about this phone? The design, the build quality, the display? Leave a comment down below, and also let me know what the camera samples looked like. And I guess that's pretty much it. If you're interested in any alternatives, plus if you're looking forward to that comparison between the Galaxy S8 and this phone, also make sure to leave a comment down below. I'm your Hurricane X. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.